Welcome to the 2084 Talent Setter podcast. In this series, we will be speaking to industry leaders from fintech, crypto, and financial services. Extremely thrilled to be talking with Seth Phillips today, founder of Bound, a fintech that protects businesses from fluctuating exchange rates. I've known Seth for around a year now, and we've helped his business with some compliance and regulatory recruitment in the past. Seth, welcome. Really looking forward to this discussion with you today.
Yep, thanks, Quentin. Happy to you've helped us find good talent, and happy to return the favor and be part of your podcast here.
Brilliant, appreciate it. I guess if we start the podcast with a little bit about you, Seth, a little bit about how your journey and how you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most entrepreneurs, I like to believe that I've always been entrepreneurial. Maybe that's true, or maybe it's not. But and as you can probably quickly tell from my voice, I'm from the U.S. Basically, the story of Bound, I got a sales job early in my career that just happened to be set up as an independent contractor, and what that ended up turning into. This was to pay my way through college, my undergraduate degree in the U.S. And what that turned into was, so I had to set up my own little company that contracted with my employer. And then after a little bit of time, I kind of moved into quite a traditional industry, and I was young and kind of tech leaning. And so I was using a lot of technology in what I was doing, and it allowed me to kind of scale up. And pretty quickly, I became the top performing salesperson at the company I worked for, even though most of the salespeople had way more experience and expertise than I did. And it was just because I was using technology to kind of scale some things that others hadn't known how to do. So then my own company came back to me and offered to like contract with me separately from my own work to like train and teach others how to use more technology in what they do. And then that kind of scaled into its first business. So I built that, I originally set that up to pay my way through college. And then it ended up being quite a successful venture for me in my early 20s, and sold that business while I was still doing my undergraduate degree. So that's how it all started for me. And I was lucky to have that start. And I did some embarrassing things, like drive a really fancy car around college during my last year in university, which is embarrassing to think back about. But it was good, and then continued. When I finished my undergraduate degree, I focused on like tech entrepreneurship, and that's when I really got exposed to like tech startups and the venture community and things like that, and fell in love with that, the ability to scale and do something really big. And then that's where I've spent the last, I don't know how long it's been, 20 years, my career, focus in that space.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it must have been a bit of a balancing act to do your degree and set up a business and I guess sell it at the same time. And I should imagine being the founder and CEO of a fintech is just as busy. There must be a lot going on. So, I mean, how do you stay positive in the face of challenges?
Oh, well, I don't always. I think that's the
Yeah.
truth. But I think it's I mean, you have to believe in what you're doing. And at Bound, maybe if I continue my story. So from there, I went to graduate school. I had another startup that didn't go so well. Went to graduate school in New York City. Went to work for a regulated fintech company called Paxos. Helped them grow from about the stage that Bound is now, about 20 or 25 people, up to over 100. And then Dan, who's my co-founder, and we worked at Paxos together for a few years, and we left there a year and a half ago to set up Bound. And that's been phenomenal. You know, it's been really good. And staying positive through that, I would say, as long as Bound is it's just believing in where we're going. We think there's a huge market opportunity to go do something, and keeping that perspective that like I believe in 5 to 10 years, Bound can be a great business. If that means there's pain for the next 3 months or 6 months or year, that's the way like I look at it. Is like this is temporary pain for a long-term objective that I still really believe in.
Great. Well, I think belief. Yeah, if you believe in something, then it's going to happen. That's definitely the approach, and it probably gets you through the tougher times as well. So talking about Bound, I mean, I've read about Bound. I know the business. I've worked with you before. Which problems is Bound solving for the foreign exchange markets?
Yeah, and there's a lot of venture-backed startups in foreign exchange and that deal with multiple currencies and things like that. And the way I like to describe this thing or talk about Bound and how we like to think that we are different is generally like I think of let me start with this. Most individuals and really small businesses or operations, when they have to deal with like foreign currencies, the problem is usually something like this: like, I have sterling today and I need euros today, or someone is sending me euros, but I don't care about euros because I'm a British company. I care about pounds, and so I want to exchange those. TransferWise and Revolut and a bunch of other startups, and now very successful, fintech companies in their own right, have kind of transitioned that market from, like, banks generally charge high fees and give bad exchange rates, and these new technology providers charge lower fees with better exchange rates. And that works quite well for individuals or for really small businesses. And where Bound is focused is a little bit upmarket from that, in terms of the size and who is doing this. Most businesses, that have revenues over a couple of $1 million a year, up to $100 million a year, something like that, have a more complex relationship with foreign currencies. They don't have euro today and need sterling today. For example, they might be like a British SaaS company who has a German customer they sign a contract with for 2 years of euro revenue going into the future. So this company doesn't just care about the exchange rate today. They care about the exchange rate next month, next quarter, 6 months down the road, a year, 2 years from now. That requires something a little bit more complicated than just getting a good exchange rate today. That's the problem that Bound, we call that forward risk. Forward risk is when I don't just care about the exchange rate today, I care about the exchange rate in the future. And I want to take some actions to prevent me being adversely impacted by movements in that exchange rate. So that's called forward risk. Hedging is like the traditional financial service that people would use financial products to protect their business against adverse movements in an exchange rate. That is what Bound is really trying to differentiate itself on. Sure, we do currency exchange. If you have pounds today, we can give you euros today. So can lots of other people. But where we really want to focus, and the problem that we really want to solve that's a little bit different, is that worrying about forward risk, caring about where the exchange rate's going to go. Most of their tools can't help businesses deal with that problem very well. That's still very much a traditional old school financial service that's done over the phone, in a relationship with someone at your bank or with your FX broker. And we want to bring tech to that space, and make that more of a technology solution.
Okay. And how does the tech that you bring to it change the way, I guess, that you do business in this space and the user experience?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a spectrum that we walk along and try to push ourselves down for our existence. Our real mission, our real goal at the company is to make FX effortless for businesses. It's something like, I'm a British company, I can transact internationally, and I just don't have to think about foreign currencies anymore. That's the nirvana state that we want to drive towards. It'll take us a long time to get to that point. Today, we're doing a couple of things. First of all, we're just making like most tech companies would make the claim, being really transparent, being really like low fee and fair on what we do, kind of opening up everything, kind of what TransferWise did for the retail market, international payments, doing that up for like the professional FX market for businesses, and trying to give good terms and things like that for those transacting. And then really what we're doing is stepping forward into more and more automation. We have APIs available for companies who have like FX built into their product. So for example, you could be a travel company, and you can imagine, as a travel company, there's lots of FX risk floating around in your business. You have customers paying you in dollars, and you owe a hotel Thai baht 3 months from now when the customer actually travels, and who sits on that risk? Either the customer does, the hotel does, or like the travel reseller does. Somebody is sitting on that risk over that period of time. So we have APIs available. So companies like that could use our APIs to be able to manage those risks if they're the ones sitting on them, which it generally is. Or we have things that like very simple, like hedging strategies, approaches that companies can use to say, hey, I'm a SaaS company, and I charge my customers online in US dollars, let's say, but I'm based in Europe. And so I care about euros at the end of the day, but my international customers generally pay me in dollars. So I have this stream of dollars coming in, US dollars coming in every month. Most of those companies would just, every once in a while, either they stockpile up the US dollars and then convert it when they need it, or they convert it as soon as they get it. Both of those is probably not a very thoughtful approach, because you could be converting on a really bad day. And so we try to provide some solutions that kind of come off the shelf to say, hey, with the cash flow that looks like this, these are some of the alternative ways that people think about managing their currency risk. And they can say, hey, I want to take a low risk approach, or I want to take a high risk approach to manage that. They can help you be a little bit more thoughtful, a little bit smarter about how and when they exchange their currencies. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're trying to step into. Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, it sounds like it's obviously a really good space, and I think you found a good niche there. And talking about building the business, I guess, you mentioned you're up to 25 people now.
Yep.
And when we originally spoke, probably around this time last year, June time 2021, we were working together on your head of compliance and MLRO role. And that was a really interesting role to go to market for candidates for, because I thought you had a great approach to compliance and financial crime and managing it. It was very attractive to candidates because your view was to have compliance, that the compliance and regulatory functions integrated into the decision-making process of your business at the highest levels, and for that person to be able to help give input on products and user experience and weave controls into the products from the beginning. So not as an aside function or a hindrance, but as at the core of your business and what you do, which is really refreshing. And I think that's why it was so attractive to candidates. So why did you take this approach?
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that that it was attractive to candidates. We laughed at ourselves. We're trying to hire quite a senior person, which we ended up hiring. Jim, our head of compliance, is really great, but I think at the time there were two of us, and we maybe had like $200,000 of investment capital in the bank at the time. And now a year later, we're 25 people. We've raised over $15 million in the last year to go out and solve these problems. And we've grown in a company. As a company, our product is launched, and now we have dozens and dozens of customers transacting millions and millions of dollars on our platform every month. And so it's been a lot of growth. But so I think we laugh with Jim that we were lucky that we caught him to kind of believe in the mission so early on, and when there was really nothing there. But we just thought it was important. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's a fintech company. We exist, whether directly or indirectly, we exist at the permission of the regulator. And so I think you have to embrace that fact in most fintech and in any kind of regulated space. And so it's vitally important to the operations of the business, just to exist and provide your services. If for our business specifically, even to provide a payment service, you need to be regulated by the FCA. And if you're going to do anything more complicated than a payment service, then you even need to step it up and become more than just a payment services company or an EMI, e-money license company, and you'll need like derivatives, which you'll need a MiFID license for from the FCA or permissions for. So we've been in that process now for some period of time and working with the FCA on that. So I think that's the first thing, is just understanding how vitally important it was to the business. We kind of view what we're able to do as a business, and there's regulatory fences around us. There's certain things that we can do today. And there's certain things that we can't do today because we don't have FCA authorization for those yet. And as we get FCA authorization for those things, it expands the area, like it expands the size of our playground, the things that we can do, the strategies and solutions that we can provide to our customers. So we knew early on that to build a great product, we were going to need space, space to experiment, space to try things, space to put together different financial products and new packages that make more sense to customers. You know, I'm American, my co-founder is American. One of the reasons we're based here in the UK is the FCA is quite, as in comparison with the US and some other regulators, is quite forward thinking and quite willing to work with fintech and tech companies and startups. And to make hedging is a quite complex financial service. Me and my co-founder, one of the projects we worked on in our last company was building software for extremely sophisticated commodities and currency hedgers. And these things are complicated. Financial products are complicated. The strategies are complicated. You know, everybody kind of understands getting a good exchange rate for pound euro today, but managing that forward risk is a much more complex service. And the financial products to do that are more complicated and represent different risks. And we're going to need to package them in a way that's easier to understand, easier for customers to embrace the risk. And so we knew early on that we need to like expand that fence of capability of what we could do. And so that was the reason it was such a high priority for us, is giving ourselves the space to experiment in a compliant regulatory way. And then we wanted to be interwoven into the company. And that's, you know, into the product. You know, you would hate to have like a beautifully designed product, and then at the end, you know, you ask compliance for a checkoff and they say, you know, this isn't going to be compliant, and then you have to redo something. We wanted to be interwoven seamlessly, so the customer has a smooth experience going through their first interaction with Bound all the way to repeat use of our product, and they never kind of feel this hang up with compliance, maybe in a more traditional sense that they might have somewhere else.
That's a great approach, I think. And I mean, it is an approach that's becoming a little more, I guess, commonplace. And compliance officers are certainly seen as they do have a lot of commercial value adds that they can bring to the table, and I think you've seen that early on, which is great. In terms of talent, I guess, and the culture at Bound. I mean, what is the culture at Bound, and how have you built it?
Yeah, I mean, the culture at Bound. I mean, we very much view ourselves as a tech startup. We very much view ourselves as kind of like wanting to operate with like an extremely high level of speed of execution, of moving really quickly, high experimentation. You know, like most startups, we do everything we can to put the customer at the center of everything we do. And try to provide the customer with something magical, you know, like that's the expectation we have of ourselves, is our product should feel like it's a little bit unbelievable. Like, I can't believe this is so easy, or I can't believe it works this well. That's the kind of, it should automagical, you know, is kind of like the an old friend of mine used to use that adjective all the time to describe like great tech products, and that's what we want to provide. So that's the customer at the center, and yeah, but when we try to be like a very, lean into experimentation, act really fast, act in the best interest of our customers, be ruthlessly focused on the truth. So when you have that experimentation, try things, and if they fail, it's fine to fail, but fail fast and move forward. It's cliche, I guess, in tech, but it's nonetheless true. And focus on great results. You know, we can do a lot of work. In fact, I would argue at a lot of startups, and this is probably true of Bound and many other startups, that a lot of the work that we do doesn't matter. And we spend a lot of time working on things, not intentionally, of course, and then working on projects and features and things that just don't get used that much, that customers don't fall in love with. And so being really ruthless with ourselves around the outcomes that we're after rather than the outputs of our work. You know, if I generate a high amount of work, but the customer doesn't care, then I really didn't accomplish that much. And so focusing on those results from the customer's perspective. Those are some of the things that are important to us at Bound. Yeah.
Cool. And how I guess they're important factors for people that work in your business. why do you think the culture is important to those people? Those you've mentioned, high speed experimentation, creating a magical customer service, or a customer experience. I guess people working at Bound, how does that culture help them? How does it motivate them? How does it keep them? How does it retain them, I guess?
Yeah, you'd have to ask them. see how good that is or isn't.
Surely they'd be honest with you, wouldn't they, Seth?
Yeah, I hope so. I can tell you what we strive for in that regard is that these types of things generate an environment where people have a high level of autonomy to do their job. If everything is done to the best standards of my abilities, then we're going to get limited results everywhere. Because my abilities, they top out at a pretty low point in many areas of the business, and so we need to have people that can be much better at their different areas than I would be, and we need to give them the space to be better. So the idea is to try to, what we strive for is to give people space and a lot of independence, and then have expectations that are high around them to deliver an excellent result for our customers. So that's what we strive for. How well we pull that off, it's easy to say, it's hard to do, and so we do our best. But some of our employees probably really feel that's true, and some probably feel like we stumble sometimes, which is also probably true. But that's what we're after.
Great. Well, I mean, I guess, like you say, things are moving very quickly. So yeah, I guess it's one of those environments where some things work and some things don't. But that's great. It's I'm sure you're aware. You've raised some recent funding. You've been building the team. It's an interesting market at the moment in terms of talent and recruitment. How do you go about attracting talent at Bound, whether it be compliance talent, risk talent, regulatory talent, or even more competitive markets like tech, for example? What's your approach to attracting those sorts of people?
Yeah, I think I think this has probably been like a tale of two worlds over the course of the last 12 months. I would say when we were starting, it was the height of at the middle of 2021. Man, that must have been pretty close to the peak. Maybe Q3 of 2021 or something like that was the absolute peak in terms of venture spending and investing happening, and things have slowed down dramatically this year. And so in an extremely competitive market, probably the best thing we had going for us at that point was just pure enthusiasm. Just me, my co-founders, the other few people that joined the company early on, just real authentic enthusiasm about what we're doing, feeling like there's a huge opportunity in front of us. They're available to go take, and just believing that. And nothing probably more than that. A lot of outreach, a lot of talking to people, but probably just enthusiasm and optimism was probably our best selling point at that period in time. Transitioning now, like I said, a tale of two very different environments as tech markets have plummeted, as venture capitalists have pulled back. We're in a lucky position to have raised some capital recently and put ourselves in a really good position financially as a business. So we're really, really happy about that. And so we can afford to continue to grow the company when a lot of people, I think, are going to have to be scaling back or letting staff go or not being able to. And now it's a little bit different. Now we have more inbound interest from candidates, and now candidates, I think, are it's going to be a transition, I think, at least for a little while in tech. As that pulls back, and then I think things will normal out again. At some period of time, I don't know when that happens, in 6 months or 12 months or 24 months. At some period of time, the market will find its new normal, and maybe it'll be back to as white hot markets that were 2021, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's somewhere in the middle. Like I said, we're lucky because we raised some more capital, so we can now wait for that market to find its new normal before we need to fundraise again, and we can continue to hire and kind of grow through that. And but I think we might be in a much different environment now, whereas some of the big tech companies are scaling back their teams and laying off their team. There's a lot of talent available, and then it's going to be a little bit more, supply and demand shifts, and where it's going to be us holding our standards really high, and trying to attract the best people we can that can really help us build. Help us build the fundamental. This is kind of how we view this. This is kind of in a down market that we're probably looking at it for the next 6, maybe 24 months, who knows, that this will be a time for us to build a great fundamental business. I don't think we'll have the market will go through sexy fundraises and huge dollar figures and huge valuations maybe in the next couple of years. But hopefully we can build a great business with really strong fundamentals over this period of time that when high valuations come back in a couple of years, we can benefit from. That's our hope in terms of being able to attract talent and hire people in this new circumstance where the general market's pulling back.
Yeah, it's definitely been a very interesting, hiring market, recruitment market this year, with so many companies looking to hire at the beginning of the year. I've not seen a market like it in a long time, and the salary inflation to happen in such a short period of time for compliance and regulatory roles in particular, but I think across the board really. And then, like you say, to sort of calm down a little bit, there's still quite a lot going on in the compliance space. But at the same time, there are some tech firms, announcements fairly recently, being June, of tech firms, making redundancies and things. So much has happened in such a short period of time, in 6 months.
Yeah, and it's probably, I say it's probably an overreaction. Who knows? I have no crystal ball. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was such a huge push and so many venture dollars going out the door in 2021 and just the beginning of 2022, and then to have tech stocks fall, late stage companies that were about to get sold not get sold, venture capitalists that were just about to exit companies not exit companies, and that kind of trickle down, and you see this big repeal. I think I read somewhere, Sequoia, I apologize if you hear this and I'm misquoting you, but my understanding is Sequoia hasn't done a $20 million Series A since the beginning of the year. That's a pretty that may or may not be actually true. I heard that it could be a rumor, but it's something like that. It is definitely indicative of what's happening, and whether or not it's not completely correct. But this kind of pullback could be a knee-jerk reaction, and then we go back to some normal state. It might not be. It might be an extreme time. I hope not, but I'm hoping it's like a knee-jerk reaction with a strong pullback, and then it can kind of go back into a new normal state somewhere in the middle there in the coming months or year. But I guess we'll see.
I think you've described a cycle there that I've definitely seen quite a few times in the traditional banking and financial services space, where there is a round of redundancies, and then a few months later a lot of hiring happening. So it's definitely happening in the traditional space. So yeah, I guess a final question really, Seth. It was certainly seems that trust and transparency bought through the tech products that you offer your clients, customers. They can see everything on there. They can see the pricing. It's all very clear and transparent. So I guess ethics and seem to be at the core of Bound's ethos. I guess more generally, do you think there's a shift to working more ethically in financial services or fintech, and if so, why?
Yeah, I think the short answer is probably yes. There's probably an overall shift in terms of societal priorities, across different industries that ethically produced, clothing and materials and products and foods, and so there's probably a general societal push that direction. I think in terms of financial services in particular, transparency provides that trust, and most financial services traditionally have not been particularly transparent. You don't know exactly what you pay. You know how much and FX is very much this way. I convert currencies, or I do financial trades in between currencies, and traditionally, I don't know exactly how much commission my broker or bank is taking from that. I know what exchange rate I get, of course. I can calculate how many euros I had and how many pounds I had, but how much of that went to my provider, whether it was a fair deal or not, has just been opaque. And there's probably a lot of good providers that acted ethically, but it just wasn't shown. And there were probably some or people who sometimes did or sometimes didn't who were predatory. That kind of opaque environment allows that to happen, and you can't tell the difference between one or the other. So I think that's a big push in just being more transparent, and it provides that trust. For Bound, I think it's vitally important. Again, like I said, starting with that as a base, our goal is to move to more and more automation. So customers are inputting some information, and we're managing currency exposures for them over time according to their settings and their requests. Eventually, like I said, we use APIs where customers can set settings to say, like, we'll give you this data and make these trades for us when X, Y, and Z happen. Trust has to be, if we're going to be something like that, where we're an automated solution, there has to be an extremely strong foundation of trust between us and them, us and our customers, because using that as the most extreme example, where like a customer is going to turn on our product through our APIs and use our transaction and transact with us for potentially large dollars, value figures, and on an ongoing basis. If they thought we were back there messing around with how much commission we were taking from each trade, or sometimes giving them a good rate or sometimes giving them a bad rate, they wouldn't do it. They couldn't trust us to turn that on and let that run on autopilot, because that foundation of trust isn't there. So for us, it's vitally important, and because you'd never trust an automated service that that isn't going to treat you fairly, and that's where we want to go as a business. So I do think there is a step towards that, and hopefully consumers will continue to demand more and more of that. I think that's fair, and I think that things should move that way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm a great believer in trust, and obviously it's I say obviously, but it's critical to my business as well, being a people business. So, well, Seth, that's absolutely brilliant. That's all my questions. I thought that was a riveting conversation. If people want to get in touch with you, or they want to know more about Bound, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing is just bound.co. Bound.co is our URL. They can email info@bound.co if they have specific questions. And yeah, easy to find us. And happy to talk to fintech talent about, we're hiring everywhere, of course. And people with FX experience, people with engineering and technical talent and product talent and customer success, as well as companies who face currency risk, particularly now with interest rates bouncing around, currencies extremely volatile. Man, if you were a US dollar buyer, meaning like I'm a UK based or European based company who has US dollar costs. And so I need to acquire dollars every month or every quarter to pay fees or partners or providers in US dollar. Man, you've probably been killed in the last couple of months. Huge strengthening of the US dollar in the last couple of months. And now if you're a US dollar seller, meaning you have a lot of US dollars and you're getting pounds, it's been great the last couple of months, but I'm not going to predict the future, but it may or may not continue to be great. And so for companies who face those kinds of risks, who do worry about where the exchange rate is going to be next quarter or 2 quarters or a year from now, love to be in touch and see if our technology might be able to help you manage those risks.
Superb, Seth. Well, thanks again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yep. Thanks, Quentin.
Thank you.